After death, what changes does the body undergo? In just 2 seconds, the body loses oxygen. Within 10 seconds, the body temperature starts to drop. After 2 minutes, the body begins to cool. In 30 minutes, blood begins to pool. 2 hours later, muscles stiffen. 7 hours in, microbes begin to proliferate. 12 hours later, cells start to die. A day passes, and the body begins to decay. 2 days later, inflammation sets in the abdomen. Also, 2 days later, the skin color starts to change. 3 days in, maggots start to appear. 4 days later, the skin begins to slip. Again, 4 days later, hair starts to fall out. 4.5 days later, nails start to indent. 4.8 days later, blood blisters start to form. 5 days later, insect activity peaks. 6 days later, the skin darkens. 8 days later, tissues begin to liquefy. 9 days later, fluids start to drain from the body. 10.5 days later, internal organs begin to decompose. 12 days later, bones become exposed. 17 days later, the body decomposition slows. 20 days later, insect feeding begins. 30 days later, the body no longer has any tissue. 32 days later, only dry remains remain. 36 days later, the bones become clear. After a year, the body begins to skeletonize. 10 years later, the body turns into stone.